In 2024, a machine that never blinks and never tires was aimed at an empty stretch of Peruvian desert, and within months it uncovered something 100 years of human searching had completely missed. What it found didn't just add to a famous mystery. It quietly flipped the answer people had believed for decades. But to understand why that matters, you first have to see what was already hiding in the sand, waiting 15 centuries for someone to notice. Fly over southern Peru and the desert cracks open into geometry. Dead straight lines run for miles without ever bending. Triangles, spirals, sprawling trapezoids. And then the animals appear: a hummingbird, a monkey with a curling tail, a spider, a condor with a wingspan wider than a jumbo jet. Some figures stretch nearly 1,000 feet across the sand. They were scratched into the earth 2,000 years ago, and they have barely faded. Now here's the part that breaks your brain. Stand directly on top of one of these figures, and you'd see nothing but a shallow ditch in the dirt. No shape. No animal. Just faint lines wandering off in every direction. The full picture only snaps into focus from hundreds of feet in the air, a viewpoint the people who carved them could never possibly have had. So who spends years carving a hummingbird the size of a stadium, then makes it impossible for themselves to ever see the finished thing? For decades, that one question turned this desert into one of archaeology's greatest riddles, pulling in scientists, dreamers, and even people convinced that aliens must have been involved. And the answer, it turns out, was hiding in the dirt the entire time. The place is the Nazca Desert, a bone-dry plateau on Peru's southern Pacific coast. It's one of the driest regions on Earth. Some spots can go years without a single real rainfall. Almost no wind ever stirs the surface. It's the kind of silence where nothing moves for decades at a time. And that crushing emptiness is the exact reason the drawings still exist. The people who made them are called the Nazca, and they thrived here from around 200 BC to 600 AD. Some lines are even older, left by an earlier group called the Paracas. These were farmers clawing survival out of a land that gives almost nothing, no reliable rivers, just relentless sun. To drink it all, they dug spiraling underground aqueducts, some still flowing today. The technique behind the lines was almost absurdly simple. The desert floor is coated in reddish pebbles, darkened over centuries by iron oxide baking in the heat. Just beneath lies pale, yellow-gray soil. Remove the dark stones, and the light ground shines through. That's the whole secret. No paint. No deep carving. Trenches only 4 to 6 inches deep. Sit with that for a second. The most famous geoglyphs on the planet are, at heart, the world's largest scratch drawings, made by picking up rocks and setting them aside. A child could grasp the method in 10 seconds. Yet an entire civilization poured centuries of labor into it, across a stretch of desert bigger than many modern cities. And it all survived because of a quiet accident of chemistry. The exposed soil holds lime. Morning mist rolls in and hardens it into a tough protective crust. No rain to wash the lines away. No wind to bury them in sand. The desert became a canvas that simply refused to forget. But that miracle only makes the real mystery louder, because the obvious question never went away: who was all this for? If you can't see the image from the ground, and these people never once flew, then the design wasn't built for human eyes at all. At least, that's what generation after generation of researchers assumed. And that single assumption sent every one of them looking straight up. In 1927, a Peruvian archaeologist hiking the foothills glimpsed strange lines etched in the valley floor below. Then, in the 1930s, commercial planes began crossing Peru, and pilots looked down and gasped. Almost overnight, the world realized this desert was covered in a gigantic hidden gallery, one that had stayed invisible for well over 1,000 years. Then came the woman who gave her life to them. Maria Reich, a German mathematician, spent nearly half a century out here, measuring, sweeping, guarding the lines with a broom and a stepladder. She slept alone in the desert to protect them. And she was convinced the figures formed a giant astronomical calendar, mapping the sun, the moon, and the stars. Her theory was genuinely beautiful. Align certain lines with the solstice, and maybe the Nazca were tracking the turning seasons. But here's where it gets really interesting. When other scientists actually ran the statistics, the star alignments came out weaker than anyone hoped. The tidy calendar idea began to crack apart. So if the answer wasn't in the stars, then where? A darker, far more human answer surfaced: water. In a desert this merciless, rain was the razor's edge between life and death, and water rarely fell from the sky, it trickled down from the distant mountains. Many researchers now believe the lines were woven into rituals begging the gods for water and fertility, sacred pathways walked in ceremony, offerings pressed into the soil, desperate prayers aimed at whatever powers were thought to command the rain. That reframes absolutely everything. The drawings were never a gallery meant for us to admire. They were a conversation between a desperate people and the sky itself. The intended audience was never human at all. It was the gods believed to be watching from far above. A hummingbird carved for the heavens, not for a single person on the ground. And that's not even the strangest part. Some lines slice straight across the figures, as if the path itself mattered more than the picture. People may have walked the shapes in slow procession, tracing a spider, a monkey, a bird step by careful step, turning the very act of drawing into a kind of moving prayer. For nearly a century, that's roughly where the mystery stalled out. Theories, educated guesses, gorgeous photographs, and almost no way to truly prove any of it. The desert kept its secrets locked in the dust. Until 2024, when the investigation finally gained a partner that never blinks, never tires, and never stops staring at the ground. Scientists from Japan's Yamagata University, led by archaeologist Masato Sakai, teamed up with IBM's research labs to train an artificial intelligence on the desert itself. The system was tuned to detect faint patterns roughly 20 times better than the human eye. It scanned image after image, flagging shapes buried in the visual noise that people had walked straight past for generations. The results were staggering. In just 6 months of fieldwork, researchers confirmed 303 brand new figurative geoglyphs, boosting the known count of figures by about 40% in a single sweep, and pushing the desert's total geoglyphs past 700. Killer whales gripping knives. Severed heads. Humans, birds, llamas. A whole hidden population of drawings, surfacing almost overnight. And the machine did far more than just count. Most of the new figures were small, only around 30 feet across, and they clustered tightly along ancient, winding footpaths. That location quietly tells a story. These weren't colossal messages screamed at the gods. They were made to be seen up close, by ordinary travelers walking the trails, one single person at a time. So here's what that machine finally noticed. The Nazca weren't only drawing for an unreachable sky. The enormous line figures may well have been for the heavens, but hundreds of the smaller ones lined the roads for human eyes, right at ground level, on foot. A desert we always thought was aimed only upward was also quietly whispering to the people passing through it. 2,000 years later, we are still just learning how to look. Heavy stuff worth a second watch. Like and subscribe if you want more of this. We'll be back soon.